Cool. Thank you for joining. Let me just introduce myself. Veethika, this is the first time I'm speaking to you. So my name is Sri. I'm an enterprise solution architect in the enterprise EMEA market. So I live in Amsterdam. Uh, it's weird that I had to think about where I work, but okay. So my background is that I've been a programmer for a really long time. And for the past three and a half years, I'm doing solution architecture, pre-sales, and the likes, right? Um, Maybe a round of introductions, Veethika and then Jason.
Yeah, so I'm the product director for CI/CD, and this is a feature that we've been interested in for some time, not quite had a design for, so excited to see what you've come up with, Sri.
I'm Veethika. I'm the product designer for CI group verify stage. Yeah, that's all.
Perfect. Thank you both for joining. Let me share my screen because I've got something to show you today. So I've got two projects. By the way, it's available on unofficial.gitlab.tools. So the URL is there. Two projects. The first one is visual pipelines and the second one is Pipelib. I think we can spend more time on visual pipelines because that was the topic. Anyway, so the concept originated while I was speaking to a prospect. We were doing a 3-hour workshop with them, and basically most of my time was spent educating them about everything that can be done in a pipeline. So that means going through the spec of YAML and explaining things one by one. And like I said, I spent about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours even. And I thought, okay, let's make this better for next time. And I wanted to create some sort of a training tool which I can use in the future. And feature creep happened, and the training tool quickly became like a GUI editor for pipelines. So that's the story of visual pipelines. And that's all it is. It's just a GUI to modify and create pipelines really quickly. The second project is Pipelib, and this was a result of my discussion with two of my colleagues, Simon Mansfield and Vladimir Zalko. And basically, we saw what Azure DevOps has got. We saw what GitHub has got. They have this marketplace feature where you can search for reusable pipelines and use it. And so the discussion progressed. Okay, now GitLab has had this feature of reusable pipelines and jobs for a really, really long time. The challenge is around discoverability. It's kind of hard to find stuff unless you know where it is. But then if we want to go in that direction, we're talking about making a package manager for YAML files, basically, right? And with that comes a lot of challenges. You're talking about who can access the package manager, who can modify it, what is the workflow to author a pipeline there, all those kind of things. So Pipelib is like a simplified concept where we use a simple GitLab project as a package manager for reusable YAMLs. All right, that's that. Let me just jump to the demo now. And while I do that, I'm going to move my Zoom videos window down here. So this is the landing page of Visual Pipelines. You see a button to add stage. You press it, you can add some stages, right? So now it's created 3 stages with some random names. Let me give them sensible names. I call it build, test. Next one would be deploy. And you see 2 buttons to add jobs and remove stages. The remove stage button shows up for each stage if the stage does not contain any job, right? So the minute I add a job, that's going to go away. Let's say I'm going to say add my first job, build Java, add another job, build JS. Then I want to test my builds. So I have a JUnit job. Then for JavaScript, let's say I've got a jest test job, and I want to deploy on prod. So this is a very simple pipeline. For every action that I do visually over here, it's generating the YAML source on the side. So in the end, this YAML can either be collected and used or possibly exported out to any other tool out there. I want to add another stage because I want to review. Let's say another job for a review app, right? You can see that the order is not correct. I want to review before I deploy and prod. So drag and drop the stage and reorder them. The drag and drop, you also have it for the jobs itself. So the jobs can be moved around, right? This is a quick example of Visual Pipelines part 1. Then I want to just highlight the library button over here to demonstrate the Pipelib project, right? The pipeline project is just, so let's have a quick look at that. Let me go to the project here. The pipeline project is a schema, basically. It's a GitLab project which follows a certain schema. The schema requires 2 JSON files at root, and the JSON files contain a list of library items that can be reused. So there is one for pipelines and there's another for jobs. And the actual definition of the pipelines live in the jobs folder and the pipelines folder. So if you go into pipelines here, you can see the jobs available, sorry, the pipelines available. And the same if you do for jobs, you can see the jobs available. Now, all of these reusable pipelines and jobs are rendered over here, right? Because I don't know if you know this, but if there's a JSON file in GitLab, you can view the raw version of it, which means it's as good as a JSON API that you can connect to and read. So that's what's happening. It's connecting to that particular file and rendering them over here. Including a job will append the job source to your existing pipeline source, and importing a pipeline will just completely import the entire pipeline, replacing what you have right now. I'm going to do that here, and you can see a pipeline has been imported. I'm now going to go into the actual part that's going to help me for a future workshop or a future training. This is the job editor window, and and you probably know the GitLab CI YAML spec contains a lot of properties, like a lot, right? And this is a way to categorize them and make sense out of them. So you can see the core properties are name, stage, which stage should it belong to, which image should the job run on, and the script, right? So in this case, it's a React build. So I could say something like npm run build. This is a list, right? So I can have something else over here as well. npm clean, npm test, whatever. I can have like a list of jobs over here. Again, everything that I do gets updated. So you can see that the script tag in the YAML source got updated. This is going to happen real time for every other field that I modify as well. The next category that I have is execution. So this is everything to do with the job execution. The before script, the after script, and parallel. So let me just an example. I want to probably do npm install. Oops. Yeah, npm install, and so on. One feature that was released in 13.2, the parallel matrix builds. I'm making something for that. It's not yet there. But just to highlight, you can probably say I want to have 2 parallel builds. For every field or form over here, there is a simple explanation of what it does and a link to the docs. So when I'm sharing this with a group of people trying to educate them, they not only see the fields, but they know how to get more information about it as well. Then we go to the context. So the context has got to do with the job execution context. So the environment, of course, I can define the environment here. Extends lets you extend any other abstract job or mixins. So you can you can receive the properties from there. The image, you probably know the Docker image for the job. The resource group, this was something I did not know existed, but nice to learn about it. So this is where, let's say you have multiple pipelines executing at the same time, but you want to limit the execution of jobs to a single unit. So only one job of a certain type should always execute. Then you can define that as a resource group. Services, again, if I need some additional services, for example, let's say I need an Ubuntu LTS with my job, and let's say I need a Postgres QL, I can define that. These could also be like the complete path to the registry and the Docker image. Variables, again, simple hello. Oh, I'm not spelling things correctly today. Hello world foo bar. And everything that I've done so far gets reflected in the YAML source. In this case, services, parallel, and the variables, of course. Moving on, control flow. This is the first field here is the job interruptible or not? It's a Boolean field. Needs lets you define the dependencies between jobs, which also impacts the execution order. So I can say that this depends on one other job out there. Retry lets you define the number of times this must be retried. So I can say 3 retries if it is an API failure or a job execution timeout. Rules is the fun part. So this is where I have some feedback to share as well. So if you look at this job right now, I can add another rule, right? So let me just quickly add another rule which says allow failure true. So if you look at the rule set right now, I've got 3 rules. But if you read the source, it says rules if the second clause is also an if, and the third clause is something else, right? There is no conditional attached to the third clause. Now, the way this behaves is basically if or an else if. So this is actually an else if, and the final clause is an else. But if you just read it from the way it looks inside the YAML source, it looks like if, and nothing else. So the feedback I got, and it's not just the people I was speaking to, but my own personal instinct and some of my colleagues, is that this can be made a bit more explicit, because programmers have used if else's for a long time. And if you put 2 ifs, one below the other, without an else, it has a very specific meaning. It means the execution order is very different from an if and an else if. So one feedback I'd like to pass is, can we please make it more explicit? Can we make the second one an else if and the third one an else? But anyway, this is my feedback, not related to the visual pipeline I'm sharing. Here, of course, straightforward. You can go inside, you can modify the if, the changes, the exists. The way this works is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, you need either one of the 3. And if you have multiple, it's basically this and changes and exists. So it applies an and between each of the clause. Then you have timeout and you have trigger. Trigger lets you trigger either multi-project pipelines or nested pipelines. So you can select them and define them as you like. And finally, the output section, where you can define your cache. So cache could be a list of paths. In this case, let's say my node modules and let's say my log files, I want to cache them. You can explicitly select the policy and whether it's you want to just globally track every untracked file or not. Coverage is a simple regular expression to see if the log contains a coverage and then report it back. Artifacts, very similar to cache, except that it lives much longer and it's made available via the UI. And of course, the release, again, a latest 13.2 feature where you can select a release. So if I say yes, it's going to update my image now, and it's going to update, and it's going to take the properties that I mentioned. So for example, I can have a release tag over here, and this is going to be a release job. This is all I have right now, but let me quickly also demo one thing that I missed. For example, let's say I have a pipeline that I import. So I have an existing pipeline with 3 stages and 3 jobs. If I go to jobs and if I, let's say I have a Maven pipeline, but I have an NPM test job for whatever reason, I can import this, or let me do something else. Let me import a GitLab SAST. So it's an individual job and I import the job. It gets added to the right stage. And finally, I want to close on this pipeline that I'd like to import and show that this tool has got brilliant support for emojis just to make things look pretty. So that's all I have for you right now.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. It's more of a builder than an editor. Is that true?
How would you distinguish the two?
There's just some things that aren't covered there. Well, you can be more expressive in the YAML than you can be in the visual editor, for example. What would it do if you loaded it and started editing it? Does it just discard all of the things that it doesn't understand? For example, matrix was an example that you mentioned. It's not in there yet. So if I had matrix in there and I loaded a pipeline that had matrix and then saved it, where would that go?
So in this case, because there is no field that edits the matrix property, it will be left ignored.
It'll just leave it there. Okay, so it's not like building an internal representation of the YAML and then like
no. So it is dead simple. You know, if I can share some of the internals of it, it's dead simple. This is literally the state of the application. Let me get rid of the emojis. Let me go for something like this. So this is a simpler pipeline. This is the state of the application. And this YAML is actually converted to JSON one-on-one.
Okay. So if it doesn't know how to display something, it just doesn't display anything about it, but it's still there.
Yeah. So the state remains, it just doesn't know how to show it on the UI.
Okay. It could be confusing in a slightly different way, But yeah, I mean, I think at least as it's an awesome start. So I hope it doesn't sound like I'm like finding problems with it, but that was just my one question that came up as I was watching. I think we could probably pretty much ship it right away as a pipeline builder, and maybe even as an editor. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to
I
give
can make
people
some
access
points
to it,
why it
right?
should not be shipped right now. So if I, so, you know, like right now, I'm not an engineer. I'm not part of the product team. I'm a guy out there just building stuff.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean
If I
like,
was in your shoes, I would make sure that this has linter available. So it lints every change. And we also have a JSON schema for the YAML, and it should check the schema. Like it should validate
yeah,
it against the schema and lint. And if you can build, like if I can build or whoever can build these two features, then I think it's worth getting some trial users to try it out and see if it actually helps them or not.
yeah. So you wouldn't even let people use it if it didn't have the
No, I mean,
linter?
they can of course use it, you know, like, so it's available in a public URL. You can just go now and use it. I can't stop you from using it, but I would not stick the GitLab banner on it. It's not an official GitLab product right now, unless you can lint stuff. I want to lint stuff. I want to make sure that every output that comes from this tool will run without any linting errors.
Okay, well, that's totally fine. The linter, there's already an endpoint for the linter, so that should be pretty doable very quickly. Um, but yeah, so maybe something like that, even if it's just like on the doc site, could be shipped, and you could use it as a builder, and I think we can start getting iterative feedback on it right away.
I think we should, like, just another thing you might want to note for your front-end developers is that they build their stuff with Vue.js, and this is built with React. So it's fine. These two can work with each other. There is no real problem. And the YAML that gets published is published to the global namespace. So in theory, like Vue code can access it,
That's
even though
fair.
it's created by.
Yeah, I'm also saying ship it from a product only perspective. And the very next thing I'm going to be doing is showing it to the engineers.
Yeah.
But yeah, ship it was kind of like, yeah, not like literally this second, but you know, maybe in 13.3, which is the milestone we're in development of. Yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful. It's something that a lot of people have been asking for. It's valuable, even if it's temporarily just a builder, but if it can be more than that already, then that's even more amazing.
When you say ship it, where do you want to ship it? Is it part of the web IDE? Is it part of a Visual Studio Code plugin? Or is it like an external Chrome or a Firefox plugin? Like, is it?
I would have to think about it, but I would almost put it on the docs website, in the getting started with CI/CD section, and it depends on if it can be a builder and an editor right away.
Yeah.
We can always move it to more places later, but like as an initial iteration to get people looking at it and say like, hey, we've got this thing, could you go try it? I might just put it on the docs website. If I didn't put it there, I might put it just on the you know, did you see the DAG visualization thing that we did recently where there was like a little button, there's a tab that you could go to and it said like beta on it. I might put this somewhere in like the pipeline when you've got like a GitLab CI YAML up, I might add like a tab there that says, hey, you know, would you like to edit this visually? Something like that. And then we can iterate from there and it will be fine. I think people are going to love it though. Veethika, do you have anything to add on this one? Obviously it doesn't have any GitLab design elements or anything like that at the moment.
Yeah, it has, I think, use one or two colors from the design.gitlab spec.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not that much of a visual designer. So I just made like a clean engineering design. And of course, you know, if you have input where it should look more GitLab-ish, then I'm happy to change.
I will compliment you on it. It is a nice, clean engineering design. You know.
Design-wise, I think we can put the GitLab language anytime, but interaction-wise, I think it was pretty nice. There are small little areas of intervention that would also help us in improving the usability, but that's it. It was a really nice, I mean, everything was good.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I'm going to do like in the coming weeks when I have time is implement the JSON validation and the linter, right? So we can think about how to show the warnings, for example, if there is any linting warnings, how to show it. So we can think about a few things, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then to go over to the pipeline templates thing, that's really, really cool too. And it's a little more complicated to integrate because we've got some stuff that's out there. But there's this epic that I'd really love for you to check out. Maybe you've already seen it, probably have, but the CI recipes epic is one that Kenny and I had a meeting with Simon just a few days ago, and we were talking about it. And knowing now that you were working on this too, I'm sure it's all connected. And basically what we want to have is find some solution that's basically what you've built here, which the simplest version that I could think of, like a real MVC iteration of it, was like a Pages website that anyone could make where you could go and copy paste, job snippets, and we have like a project template. You've built something that's even more nice and could be referenced in a way. So I think.
So I can share like some thoughts while I was designing this. I decided to use the GitLab project because it gives me a lot of things for free. It gives me the merge requests, which means if you want to author a reusable pipeline, we already have a workflow on how to include your work. Also the permissions and access control. Let's say I'm a large organization with thousands of users on my instance. I want some reusable pipelines to be available for certain groups. So you can just create the project in the right group and the access control just works. So I think those two were the biggest reasons, because I'm a lazy person. I did not want to create a package manager from scratch and then build a authoring workflow and the access control stuff. So I thought, okay, can we use what we have? And thankfully, GitLab, the web application exposes raw files. So if I create a JSON file, I can access it through another application, and it becomes like a RESTful endpoint for me to read information and use. So I think that was really powerful, which helped me do this. Of course, it's not perfect. I cannot search through, at least not yet, I cannot search through a list of recipes that I want to access, or maybe there should be a smarter way to group and label them. But all of that can be a next iteration. This is like get simple implementation of something that works.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only, I'm not going to put any caveats on it. I think it's wonderful, and I think that something very close to that could be shipped also as a project template, where instead of it being something that we necessarily have to integrate into the product, we could ship a project template that's set up in this way already, and it says like, here's some instructions on how to start customizing, and even if it's just you go to that project to find the templates and there isn't a nice integration between the editor or the IDE yet and then that can all come later, and you can still get value of it because everybody knows, hey, go to this one place and find all the templates. And then you could do things like having another nice thing about having it in GitLab, aside from all of the merge request flows and everything, you can put the linter onto a GitLab CI YAML, and it could automatically validate all of your snippets are valid, which is pretty cool too. So yeah, I love it. I love both of them. Thank you so much for putting these together and sharing them.
Yeah, so can I, so I don't have information right now. I know that the GitLab CI schema is available for me to use, but the linter is not. The linter is always a RESTful API call that I have to make. Can I not include it in my source code? Is it not a package that's available?
No, but there isn't, not easily. You'd essentially be making a copy of code that's kind of mixed between the runner and Rails, and I think it would be a bit of a quagmire to try and like pull it all out.
Yeah.
But we are actively working in this release. So there's already a linter that you can call via an API endpoint to about a file that's not checked in or anything, and it will do a YAML validation and some basic schema validation based on what we expect, and tell you whether it's good or not. Fabio is working in this release to have it go all the way to pipeline processing, and then stop there and not actually kick off a pipeline, but do the whole tree of validation in the code. So you'll get deeper, better results. Another thing that we're adding is the ability to return the rendered YAML, which you may be interested in. So if you send the YAML to us and it has includes in it or whatever, we'll send you back what we processed, including all of the includes kind of merged into one single document.
Yeah.
So that maybe is interesting as well for some troubleshooting or
actually,
authoring use cases.
No, that's a very good point. I actually thought about includes and how that should work. And so one of my roadmap items for visual pipelines is to support includes. And then, of course, the question is, how do you visualize includes in an existing pipeline? Do you actually import the source and show it there? Or is it like a project with a reference, and if I click on it, it should go to another instance of Visual Pipelines just for that particular. Anyway, so these are things that.
Yeah, it can get quite complicated, and it can be different based on the branch you're building or the tag you're building and things like that. So, but I think once this feature comes out, you'll be able to integrate it with it, and then render the return pipeline for that branch or whatever, so people can preview what might happen.
Yeah, I think what I want to do is like one ask that I have from you right now is that because I'm in a completely different team, right? I'm in the commercial team, so I want to somehow stay in sync with every future change of a GitLab CI YAML spec. So if anything is going to change in 13.3, I want to be notified about it so that I can actually update this too. What's the best process for that?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. The way that I would sort of expect it to work is that we don't necessarily need you to update manually every time. If we change it, so just like as if you were a community contributor, basically would be the workflow where you take it in.
That'll be actually awesome. If you take ownership of the product and your teams maintain it, that's great too.
I think that would be the ideal, and which is not to exclude you in any way, because like if you're passionate about it, if you want to keep working on it, you can still continue to contribute, and you can work together on it. But also that would just be kind of an insurance against what you're worried about here, that like, they would start to diverge, which we don't want.
Yeah, probably won't have enough time as well to maintain this full time. So it's good to just
have
a team which can. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Cool.
Cool. Well, my next step is to.
So I'm going to bid you now, but thank you so much for your time and for your input.
Yeah, thank you. Please upload this to Unfiltered and send me the link, and I'll share with a bunch more folks too, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Just
Thanks, everybody.
if you saw the URL, unofficial.gitlab.tools, that contains a link to the demo instance, but also to the GitLab project. So you have the source code as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.